I didn't expect anything to change that morning. Honestly, I was barely awake when I walked into the small corner coffee shop, the one with the flickering sign and the barista who always spelled my name wrong, even though it was just 4 letters. Routine was comfortable. Routine was predictable. Routine meant I didn't have to think too much. And I had been avoiding thinking for months. The place smelled like warm bread and old wooden shelves. A couple of students whispered over textbooks, a man in a suit tapped his pen against the counter, and the ceiling fan kept making that soft clicking sound, steady, rhythmic, almost tired. I stood in line, rubbing my thumb along the edge of my phone screen. I wasn't scrolling. Just holding it. The last message to my wife sat unsent, for words that looked heavier each time I read them. Are you coming home? I had typed it at 1 a.m. deleted it. Typed it again. Never pressed send. Then she walked in. The older woman with the charcoal gray scarf, mid-40s, maybe older. Elegant in a way that didn't try to be. She brought in the cold air with her, like she'd been walking fast. A few loose strands of hair clung to her cheek, and she pushed them back absently as she scanned the room. Her eyes landed on me for a second. A brief, almost curious pause. Then a small smile, soft, polite, not lingering enough to mean anything, but somehow it did. She stepped into line behind me. You're here earlier than usual, she said. I blinked. You recognize me? I recognize your order, she said, a hint of a laugh in her voice. Black coffee. 2 sugars. You always stir it longer than necessary. I felt myself look down at my hands, empty, but somehow guilty. I didn't realize it was noticeable. It is if you're standing behind you in line every Thursday. She said it casually, not flirtatiously. Like it was just a fact. But my chest tightened a little anyway. Rough morning? She asked. I exhaled. More like, a rough week that hasn't figured out it's supposed to end. She didn't answer right away. She just tilted her head slightly, the way people do when they want to say they understand without claiming they do. When it was my turn to order, I stepped forward. The usual? The barista asked. Before I could speak, the woman behind me said, black coffee, 2 sugars, like she was reciting something familiar. I glanced back at her, raising an eyebrow. She shrugged. Told you I notice things. I smiled, the first real one I'd felt in a while. As I waited for my drink, she moved beside me, adjusting her scarf. I caught myself flicking my eyes toward her hands, slender, steady, with a small faded ink mark on her thumb, like she'd been writing earlier and forgot to wash it off. My coffee arrived. She reached for her wallet, then paused. You know, she said quietly, you look like someone carrying a conversation you haven't had yet. Her words caught me off guard, not because they were accurate, but because she said them so gently. I'm just tired, I replied. She nodded. Tired people don't stir their coffee that long. Worried people do. Before I could respond, her order was called. She picked up her cup, holding it with both hands like she was grounding herself. Well, she said, offering a small, thoughtful smile, maybe next Thursday won't be so heavy. She turned to leave, but halfway to the door, she stopped, not dramatically, just enough for the light to catch on her scarf. Then she looked back, meeting my eyes, the pause slightly longer this time. Take care, okay? The door chimed behind her as she stepped into the morning air. I stood there staring at the steam rising from my cup, my thumb brushing over my phone again, and suddenly, it buzzed. A message from my wife. Short. Sharp. Out of nowhere. We need to talk. Tonight. I felt something shift, not just fear, not just anger. Something else. Something quiet and complicated. And in that moment, all I could think about was the way the woman with the gray scarf had said take care, like she could see something I hadn't said yet. I didn't see her again until the following Thursday, though I won't lie, I checked the coffee shop window every day like the universe might forget its own schedule and send her early. That morning felt different before it even started. My wife and I had talked the night before, or rather, she talked, and I listened to words that felt memorized. Not happy, need space, it's not you, the usual phrases people use when the decision was made months ago but they're only now informing you. I slept on the couch. Not because she asked, because the bed felt too big for two people who weren't really there. I walked to the coffee shop slower than usual, hands buried in my pockets, replaying every half-finished conversation we'd had in the last year. When I pushed open the door, she was already there, the woman with the gray scarf, sitting near the window with a book open but unread. Her eyes flicked up. She saw something immediately, something I hadn't realized I was wearing on my face. "You okay?" she asked before I even sat down. I nodded, though not convincingly. She closed her book carefully, placing a finger inside as a placeholder. "Sit," she said. Not as an order, as an offer. I did. My hands wrapped around my cup even though it was too hot to hold. She noticed, her eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Rough week again?" she asked. "It's starting to feel like a rough year," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. She didn't rush to fill the silence. She just waited, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her mug. A quiet, grounding motion. "My husband used to disappear into his work," she said finally. "He always said it wasn't intentional. People rarely admit the things they choose not to see." She took a slow sip of tea. Her voice wasn't bitter, just resigned. That was her small truth, offered casually, yet not casually at all. "Are you two still?" I asked gently. "Separated," she said. Then added, after a heartbeat, "Sometimes distance feels safer than closeness." We sat there like two people unwrapping truths very carefully, like they might break if handled too quickly. I found myself telling her things I hadn't admitted even to myself, like how the silence at home felt heavier than arguments, or how I'd stare at my phone waiting for messages I no longer expected. She listened. Really listened. Not nodding politely, not giving textbook advice, just absorbing my words like they mattered. "It's strange," I said at one point. "I don't know why this moment, us sitting here, stayed with me. Maybe because it feels like someone finally saw me." She looked down at her hands for a second, a faint smile pulling at the corner of her lips, the kind that comes from recognition. "You're easier to see than you think," she said softly. There was nothing romantic in her tone. And yet, there was something else. A gentleness I hadn't felt in a long time. When we stood to leave, we reached for our coats at the same time. My hand brushed her forearm, brief, unplanned, but enough to jolt something awake in both of us. She didn't pull away. Just gave the smallest, unreadable smile. "Next Thursday?" she asked lightly. I swallowed. "Yeah. Next Thursday." But it wasn't a casual question. And my answer wasn't casual either. I didn't realize how much I was looking forward to Thursday until it didn't go the way I expected. I arrived early, earlier than I should have, and took a seat by the window, pretending to skim emails I wasn't reading. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for the gray scarf, the soft nod she always gave before anything else. But when she finally walked in, something was different. She hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room like she wasn't sure she should be there. When her eyes found mine, she smiled, but it wasn't the usual small, warm smile. It looked controlled. Practiced. She walked over slowly. "You're early," she said, setting her bag down. Her voice was gentle, but distracted. "So are you." She gave a soft exhale, almost a laugh, almost not. Before either of us could settle in, the barista called out loudly, "Hey, you want your usual today?" His voice carried, turning a few heads. Her eyes flicked toward the counter, then to me, and for some reason, she looked uneasy. "Actually, she started," then stopped. Never mind. Tea is fine. Something in her tone tightened, like she suddenly regretted sitting with me. When she returned with her cup, she didn't sit right away. She took a moment, pulling out her chair with careful slowness, as if sitting too close might say something she wasn't ready to say. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, quickly, too quickly. "Just a long morning." We both knew it wasn't just that. I watched her fingers curl around her mug, then loosen, then curl again, a loop of hesitation she probably didn't realize she was showing. "You seem different today," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a heartbeat, everything softened. "I shouldn't have told you so much last time," she whispered. "I forget myself sometimes." "You didn't say anything wrong." "That's not the point." She tried to smile, but it collapsed halfway. Before I could respond, the door chimed. We both turned. A woman I vaguely recognized, my neighbor, walked in. She spotted me instantly, her eyebrows lifting in mild surprise. And that was all it took. The older woman shifted back, her body language folding into itself. She reached for her scarf even though she wasn't cold. "You know her?" she asked softly. "Barely," I said. It's fine." Her words were quick, too neat. "Maybe we should," she didn't finish the sentence. My neighbor waved. I waved back, awkwardly. She grabbed her order and left, but the moment had already changed shape. The older woman stared at the table, tracing a circle on the wood with her fingertip. "This, whatever this is," she said faintly, "it's starting to feel like a line I shouldn't be near." I felt something drop in my chest, a quiet thud. "You don't have to pull away," I said. "We're just talking." "Are we?" she whispered. Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, but charged. Like a held breath. I leaned forward without meaning to. She looked up at the exact same moment. For one suspended second, our faces were close, too close, the kind of closeness that asks a question without speaking it. Her lips parted, not in invitation but in surprise. Then she pulled back, only slightly. "I should go," she said, her voice barely steady. She stood slowly, but her hand brushed mine on the table, the lightest touch, accidental or intentional, I couldn't tell. It felt like a spark and a warning at the same time. She didn't look back as she left. But I couldn't stop replaying that almost touch, that almost confession, all the way home. I didn't think she would show up again after that day, after the way she pulled back, after the way her voice had trembled like she'd stepped too close to something she wasn't ready to name. But she did. Not at the coffee shop. Not on a Thursday. It was late afternoon, a gray, windless day, and I was walking home from work when I saw her sitting alone on the park bench near the library. No scarf this time. Just her, and the quiet curve of her shoulders, and the way she stared at the ground like it was telling her something she didn't want to hear. I almost kept walking. Almost. But something in the way her hands were clasped, too tightly, knuckles pale, made me stop. "Hey," I said softly. She looked up. Her eyes warmed, then dimmed again, like she couldn't decide which emotion had the right to stay. "You walk this way?" she asked, trying for casual. "Sometimes." "Ah." She nodded once, staring ahead again. "I wasn't waiting for you." That should have stung, but it didn't. It sounded like someone trying to convince themselves, not me. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. She hesitated, the briefest pause, then shifted slightly, making space. We sat without talking. The silence didn't feel empty, it felt like a room we were both inside, trying not to touch the walls. "About last time," she murmured. "I didn't handle it well." "You didn't do anything wrong." "That's the problem," she said quietly. "It didn't feel wrong." That landed harder than she probably intended. She exhaled slowly. I've spent years making sure I don't step into places that could complicate things. You think this is complicated? She gave a tiny, humorless smile. You're 26. I'm 46. Your wife is still in your life. And her voice cracked, barely. I don't trust myself the way I used to. I didn't know what to say. My thumb rubbed the edge of the bench, tracing a chipped corner like it would help me think. I shouldn't want someone to see me, she whispered. At my age, it feels foolish. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She kept her eyes forward, like turning toward me would be too much. It's not foolish, I said softly. She finally met my gaze, a long, steady look that stripped away the polite distance she always kept. Her breath caught, visible in the cold air. You don't understand, she said. If I let myself cross this line, even a little, I won't be able to pretend it meant nothing. Her voice faltered, a small collapse she tried to hide. Then don't pretend, I said before thinking. That changed everything. The air tightened. A flicker of something sharp and vulnerable flashed across her face. She swallowed, eyes dropping to my hand resting between us, so close to hers, barely an inch. Slowly, like gravity was pushing her, her fingers twitched toward mine, then stopped. Just short. Just enough to feel the warmth. Tell me something, she whispered. If I hadn't pulled away that day, what would you have done? My heart kicked hard, a quiet punch in my chest. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Because the truth sat too close to the line she was terrified of crossing. She watched me struggle, her chin trembling almost imperceptibly. Would you have kissed me? She asked. The question hung in the air, fragile, exposed, dangerous. I didn't answer. Because the silence already had. The next few days felt strange, like my life had been tilted a few degrees without my permission. I replayed her question, would you have kissed me? In quiet loops, the way you replay a moment you're not sure actually happened. Every time, it landed differently. Some days it felt like possibility. Other days like a warning I had ignored. By Thursday, I'd convinced myself she would be at the coffee shop. Even if she didn't say it out loud, she always showed up when things got heavy. It was her pattern, hiding in routine but letting her guard slip just enough for me to read the edges. But when I walked in, her seat was empty. Her usual tea mug wasn't on the counter. The barista didn't glance at the door like he was expecting her. There was just nothing. I tried not to look disappointed, but my body gave me away. I found myself scanning the room 3 separate times before accepting she wasn't coming. Long day? The barista asked. Something like that, I said, stirring my coffee without drinking it. I left early. The emptiness in her chair felt louder than the students arguing over their textbooks. Over the next week, she disappeared completely, not dramatically, not with any announcement. Just gone. No accidental sightings at the park. No gray scarf across the street. No familiar silhouette near the library bench. It wasn't heartbreak. Not yet. Just confusion. A suspended ache. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. On the 5th day, the twist finally came. I was walking past the grocery store when I saw her, not alone this time, but with a teenage girl beside her. 16. 17. Their faces similar enough to confirm what should have been obvious but wasn't. Her daughter. They were arguing quietly, not a fight, just a tense, careful conversation. The kind you have when you're trying not to raise your voice in public. The older woman kept rubbing her temple the way she did when she was overwhelmed. The girl kept glancing at her phone. Then the girl turned, spotted me, and nudged her mother. She froze. Not with fear, with recognition. With guilt. With something she didn't want me to read. She gave me a small nod, polite, distant, the kind of nod strangers give each other when they're pretending they've never shared anything personal. I lifted my hand slightly. A half-greeting. She didn't return it. Not even a flicker. She just led her daughter inside without a word. The message was clear even without being spoken, not here. Not like this. Not with her child watching. That night, I opened my phone and typed a message, not long, not emotional, just a simple question, "Are you okay?" I stared at the blinking cursor, thumb hovering over send. But something stopped me, maybe the image of her daughter, or the way she avoided my eyes, or how small her smile had been before she turned away. I deleted the message. Retyped it. Deleted it again. The draft sat there, unfinished, glowing against the dark room like a quiet accusation. I didn't knock on her door. I didn't go back to the park. I didn't send the message. I just sat there with my phone in my hand, feeling the ache of what almost was, and what suddenly wasn't. The evening felt strangely weightless, like the world had stopped paying attention just long enough for them to exist in their own pocket of air. She stood in the kitchen, sleeves pushed up, drying a mug she wasn't even done washing. Just, holding it. Like putting it down might force something to happen before she was ready. He hovered near the doorway, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. He'd come without texting first, a first for him. Something in him had shifted. Or settled. He didn't look tense. He looked decided. She hated that she noticed. "Hi," she said, too softly. His eyes lifted. "Hi." Silence settled between them, gentle but dense. A silence that almost had a pulse. The refrigerator hummed like it was trying to fill the space they wouldn't. She set the half-dry mug aside. "You didn't reply yesterday." "I know," he said. No excuse. No cover. Just truth. It startled her more than anything. She nodded, pretending she wasn't relieved, or worried, or both. He stepped in a little. Not close, but close enough that she felt the shift in the air. Close enough that her breath changed before she noticed it. "I thought you were mad," she said. "Were you worried I was?" he asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A quiet, involuntary laugh escaped, tired, real, too revealing. "Maybe." He looked at her for a long time. Not staring. Not searching. Just, seeing her. As if he'd stopped trying to decode her and finally understood she wouldn't be solved, only known. "I wasn't mad," he said. "I was, thinking." Her heart tightened. Thinking meant danger. Thinking meant choices. Thinking meant something might end. "What about?" she asked, even though a part of her didn't want the answer. He hesitated, jaw shifting slightly, that almost confession tension she knew too well. "You," he said finally. The word landed between them like it had weight. She blinked. Her fingers curled against the countertop. "Don't say it like that." "Why not?" "Because I'll misunderstand." It came out too honest, too bare. He exhaled, slow, shaky but quiet. Like someone stepping through a door they'd been afraid to open. "What if I want you to?" he said. Her breath caught. She looked away, eyes fixing on the edge of the sink, the leftover bubbles clinging to the steel. Anything but him. Anything but the unraveling happening inside her chest. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I know." Another step. Tiny. But she felt it like heat. "And what you're doing?" he asked softly. "Pulling back every time I get close. Is that fair?" She swallowed. "I'm trying not to lose something I shouldn't want." He let that sit. Let her sit in it. No pressure. No reaction. Just presence, steady, grounding, almost unbearably gentle. Then, quietly, I want you to choose something. Not for me. For you. Her eyes finally met his. Wide. Tired. Honest. And what if I choose wrong, she asked. He shook his head, barely a movement. Then we deal with it. Together. The word together tightened something deep in her. Broke something else open. A long, trembling pause stretched between them. She stepped toward him. Just one step. Barely anything. But enough. He didn't move. Didn't break the moment. Just waited. Her hand lifted uncertainly, stopping near his arm. Not touching, just there, suspended. Okay, she breathed. Soft. Human. Real. He let out the breath he'd been holding, and for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like a question. It felt like an answer. Time didn't shift suddenly after that night. Nothing cinematic happened. No rushing into each other's arms, no dramatic lines, no trembling confessions. Just, small things. Smaller, but steadier. She started keeping an extra mug on the counter in the mornings. The one he always reached for, pretending he didn't have a favorite. Black coffee for him. Light tea for her. 8:47 a.m. became theirs again, the unspoken minute where the day hadn't fully started but they were already standing near each other, sharing the same slow breath of morning. He didn't hover anymore. He didn't wait for permission to enter her space, he learned how to move inside it gently, respectfully. She didn't flinch when he stepped closer. Didn't tense when he brushed her shoulder while passing behind her in the kitchen. The tiny gap that once stretched like a canyon now felt like two people learning the same rhythm. Even her friends noticed, the softness in her voice when she spoke about someone helping her assemble the shelf, the faint smile she didn't realize she had when she mentioned his name. They didn't press. They didn't need to. She wasn't hiding anything anymore. Not from herself, at least. And him. He stopped pretending he wasn't waiting for her messages. Stopped staying away on purpose. Stopped overthinking every gesture, every line, every step he took toward her. It happened gradually, peace settling in the spaces that once held tension. One evening, after a long week, they found themselves at the same bench near the small park, their old bench, the one where too many unsaid things had lived for months. The city noise was soft behind them, dimmed by the late blue light. It wasn't a planned meeting. Just, routine. The habit of two people who kept choosing the same places without needing to ask why. You're quiet today, he said. I'm just, here, she replied, leaning back, letting the quiet settle over her shoulders. Here is good, he said. She looked at him. Really looked this time. The way he listened without leaning in, the way he was present without pressing. The way his knee brushed hers and neither of them moved away. Yeah, she said softly. It is. He reached for her hand, slowly, like offering a choice, not an answer. She didn't take it. Not immediately. She let her fingers hover near his, that tiny trembling space that once terrified her. Then, with a small, steady breath, she closed the distance. Their hands fit easily, like they had been waiting to rest somewhere warm. He didn't look surprised. She didn't explain anything. There was no promise made, no perfect line, no dramatic swell of emotion, just the warmth of two people finally allowing themselves to be less alone. As the sun dropped lower, he nudged her shoulder lightly. What? She asked. Nothing, he said. Just, this. She smiled, the quiet kind, the earned kind, and leaned her head against him, letting the moment breathe. Later, she would think back on this night and realize, some stories don't end. They just arrive. And this one, finally had. Engagement close. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?